The ship was dying. Sparks flew from broken control panels as Dr. Emily Watson fought with the steering system. The small research vessel shook and screamed as it fell through the thick atmosphere of the forest moon. Emily pulled hard on the controls, trying to avoid the tall trees below. The crash was loud and violent. Metal twisted and smoke poured from the wreckage. Emily's head hurt and blood ran down her face, but she was alive. She crawled out of the broken ship and looked around. Giant trees surrounded her, their leaves glowing softly in the dim light. She had never seen anything like this place before. Emily was a scientist who studied alien animals. She had come to this moon to look for new life forms, but now she was trapped. Her radio was broken and her ship would never fly again. She pulled her equipment bag from the wreckage and started walking through the strange forest. She did not get far before they found her. Tall blue people stepped out from behind the trees. They had 4 arms and skin that changed color like a rainbow. Their eyes were large and silver, and they carried long spears made of crystal that glowed within a light. Emily had read about them in her research files. They were called the Villani. The Villani surrounded her quickly. They spoke to each other in musical voices, pointing at Emily with their weapons. She tried to speak to them in their language, but they did not seem to care what she had to say. They tied her hands with rope that glowed blue and pushed her forward through the forest. They walked for hours. Emily saw amazing things, flowers that sang when the wind touched them, small animals with too many legs, trees that seemed to watch her as she passed. But the Villani warriors did not let her stop to look at anything. They kept pushing her forward, deeper into their territory. Finally they came to a huge stone building carved into the side of a mountain. It was very old and covered with symbols that Emily could not read. The Villani pushed her through a large doorway and down stone steps that went deep underground. The steps led to a massive round room with walls that went up and up until they disappeared in darkness. In the center of the room was a deep pit surrounded by stone seats. Hundreds of Villani sat in these seats, all watching the pit below. Their skin colors kept changing, red, blue, purple, gold, like a living rainbow. Emily was pushed to the edge of the pit and forced to look down. What she saw took her breath away. At the bottom of the pit was the most incredible creature she had ever seen. It was huge, as big as 3 elephants put together. Its body was covered in black scales that reflected the light like mirrors. It had 6 powerful legs, a long neck, and eyes that glowed like golden fire. The Villani called it something that sounded like thorn scale in their language. Emily could tell from the way they spoke that this was their god, their most sacred being. They threw chunks of meat into the pit while chanting prayers. The great creature ate slowly, but Emily noticed something the Villani did not see. The creature looked sad. Its great head hung low between meals, and its golden eyes kept looking up at all the people watching it. Emily had studied animal behavior for many years, and she knew loneliness when she saw it. This was not a happy god. This was a prisoner, just like her. An old Villani with white hair and golden skin stepped forward. Emily could tell he was important, maybe their leader or priest. He spoke to the crowd and pointed at Emily. The other Villani nodded and made excited noises. Emily did not understand their words, but she understood their meaning. They wanted to feed her to their god. The priest gestured for Emily to walk to the very edge of the pit. The other Villani expected her to cry or beg for her life. Instead, Emily did something that shocked everyone in the room. She knelt down at the edge of the pit and began talking to the creature below in a soft, gentle voice. "Hello there," she said quietly. "You look lonely down there. I bet you are tired of being stared at all the time." The creature's great head lifted and turned toward her. Its golden eyes met hers, and Emily saw intelligence there, deep, ancient intelligence. The Villani gasped and stepped back. Their god was not supposed to be interested in food that talked back. But the creature kept looking at Emily, its head tilted like a curious dog. Emily smiled and kept talking. "I study animals, creatures like you," she continued. "I can see that you are very smart. Much smarter than they think you are." The creature made a low sound, almost like a purr. The soft frills around its neck spread out like a fan. Emily had never seen anything so beautiful. The Villani were confused and frightened. Their sacred beast had never acted this way before. It usually ate the offerings quickly and went back to sleep. But now it was focused completely on this strange alien woman, listening to every word she said. Emily reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of food from her emergency supplies. She tossed it gently down to the creature. "Here you go, big guy. You seem like you could use a friend." The creature caught the food and ate it, never taking its eyes off Emily. The old priest stepped forward, speaking rapidly in the Villani language. Emily did not understand the words, but his tone was clear. he was very upset. The other Villani were arguing among themselves, their skin colors flashing bright red and orange with excitement and fear. Emily ignored them all and kept talking to the creature. She had a feeling that her life, and maybe the creature's life too, was about to change forever. The Villani did not kill Emily that day. They were too confused and frightened by what they had seen. Their sacred beast had never shown interest in a sacrifice before. The old priest, whose name was Aldrin, decided to keep Emily alive until they could understand what had happened. They put Emily in a small stone room near the great pit. Every day, they brought her to the edge so she could look down at the creature. The Villani expected their god to eat her eventually, but Emily had other plans. She came to visit the creature every morning and evening, always talking to it in her gentle voice. Emily had secretly given the creature a nickname, Fluffy. She thought this was funny because the creature was huge and covered in hard black scales, but around its neck were soft, feathery frills that moved like silk in the breeze. When the creature was calm and happy, these frills would spread out in beautiful patterns. Emily was probably the only person who had ever seen them this way. "Good morning, Fluffy," Emily would say each day. "How are you feeling today?" The creature would lift its great head and look at her with those intelligent golden eyes. Emily began to notice that its scales changed color slightly depending on its mood. When it was sad, they turned dark gray. When it was interested in something, they became brighter, almost silver. Emily was a scientist, and she knew how to study animal behavior. She watched Fluffy carefully and began to understand what it was feeling. The creature was very lonely. It had been alone in this pit for a very long time, with no one to talk to or play with. The Villani fed it and worshipped it, but they never treated it like a friend. After a week of daily visits, Emily decided to try something new. She began teaching Fluffy simple games. She would drop small stones into the pit in patterns, and Fluffy would use its long tail to arrange them in the same patterns. The creature learned very quickly and seemed to enjoy the mental challenge. The Villani watched this with growing amazement. Their sacred beast was playing. It had never played before. Some of the younger Villani thought this was wonderful, but the older ones worried that Emily was somehow damaging their god's dignity. Emily also noticed that Fluffy could make its scales glow with different colors. She realized this was how the creature communicated. Bright blue meant happiness. Red meant excitement or anger. Purple meant curiosity. Green meant contentment. Emily started using colored lights from her equipment to talk back to Fluffy in the same way. Their conversations became more complex over time. Fluffy would show Emily colors, and Emily would respond with her lights. Soon they had developed a simple language that only they understood. Emily learned that Fluffy was not from this world at all. The creature showed her patterns of lights that looked like star maps, trying to tell her about its real home among the stars. One evening, Emily made a discovery that changed everything. She was sitting by the pit when Fluffy began showing her a series of colors she had never seen before, deep purple mixed with gold, flashing in a rhythm like a heartbeat. Emily realized with shock that Fluffy was crying. The creature was showing her its sadness and loneliness in a way that was more clear than any words. "Oh, Fluffy," Emily whispered. "You miss your family, don't you? You are not supposed to be alone like this." Fluffy's scales flashed bright blue. Yes, he understood and agreed. That night, Emily could not sleep. She thought about everything she had learned. Fluffy was clearly intelligent, maybe as smart as a human. The creature had been trapped here for years, maybe centuries, with no one who understood what it needed. The Villani treated it like a god, but gods do not need friends. Fluffy was not a god, it was a person, just in a very different body. The next morning, Emily did something that horrified every Villani who saw it. When they brought her to the pit's edge, she climbed down the stone walls and jumped into the pit with Fluffy. The Villani screamed and reached for their weapons, certain that their god would kill the crazy human immediately. Instead, Fluffy moved very slowly and carefully toward Emily. The creature lowered its great head until it was level with Emily's chest. Emily reached out with trembling hands and touched the soft frills around Fluffy's neck. They were even softer than they looked, like touching warm silk. Fluffy made a sound that Emily had never heard before, a deep, musical humming that seemed to come from its whole body. The creature was purring, just like a giant cat. Emily laughed and hugged Fluffy's massive head. The creature's scales turned the brightest silver Emily had ever seen, pure joy and contentment. The Villani could not believe what they were seeing. A human was hugging their sacred beast, and the beast was enjoying it. Some of them fainted from shock. Others began praying frantically, not sure if this was a miracle or a disaster. From that day forward, Emily spent most of her time in the pit with Fluffy. They played games together, shared meals, and had long conversations using their color language. Emily learned that Fluffy had once lived with others of its kind on a world far away. Something bad had happened there, war, disease, or natural disaster, and Fluffy had escaped in a small ship. The ship had crashed on this moon, and the Villani had found Fluffy hurt and dying. The Villani had saved Fluffy's life, but they had never understood what the creature really needed: friendship, conversation, and companionship. Emily gave Fluffy all of these things, and in return, Fluffy gave Emily loyalty and love unlike anything she had ever experienced. The old priest Aldrin watched this friendship grow with mixed feelings. He was happy to see their sacred beast so content, but he worried about what it meant for his people's beliefs. Everything they thought they knew about their god was changing. Emily did not know it yet, but their peaceful time together was about to end. Danger was coming to the forest moon, and soon Emily and Fluffy would face a test that would change both of their lives forever. The sky turned red on a Tuesday morning. Emily was sitting with Fluffy in the pit, sharing breakfast and practicing their color language, when the first ships appeared. They came down from space like falling stars, but these stars brought death instead of wishes. Emily had never seen ships like these before. They were black and angular, covered in sharp points and glowing with evil-looking red lights. The ships moved fast and made no sound as they flew over the forest. Emily counted 12 of them, each one bigger than a city block. Fluffy saw the ships too. The creature's scales immediately turned dark red. The color Emily had learned meant danger and anger. Fluffy's soft frills flattened against its neck, and it made a low growling sound that made Emily's bones vibrate. Whatever these ships were, Fluffy did not like them at all. The Villani in the amphitheater were pointing at the sky and talking excitedly. Their skin colors flashed between yellow and orange, fear and confusion. Old Priest Aldrin climbed down into the pit, moving faster than Emily had ever seen him move before. "The Star Devils have come," Aldrin said in broken English. He had been learning Emily's language over the past few weeks. "The prophesies speak of this day. Black ships from the void, bringing slavery and death." Before Emily could ask what he meant, explosions began in the distance. The forest lit up with bright flashes, and the sound of weapons fire echoed off the mountain walls. The invasion had begun. The attackers called themselves the Hegemony. They were insect-like creatures with 6 legs, hard shells, and compound eyes that saw in all directions. Their leader was Captain Marcus Reed, a cold and calculating warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds for his empire. Captain Reed stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the forest moon through his many eyes. "Scan for mineral deposits," he ordered his crew. "This world shows high concentrations of quantum crystals. We will strip mine the entire surface if necessary." "What about the native population?" asked his second-in-command. "Catalog them for slave labor," Reed replied without emotion. "If they resist, exterminate them. These primitives are worth nothing except as workers in the mines." The Hegemony forces landed near the Villani villages and immediately began their attack. The Villani's crystal spears and traditional weapons were useless against the invaders' energy shields and plasma weapons. Within hours, most of the villages were burning and thousands of Villani were trapped in glowing prison fields. Emily watched the destruction from the rim of the pit. Smoke rose from burning trees, and she could hear the screams of the Villani people in the distance. Her heart broke as she saw families being separated and proud warriors falling under the aliens' advanced weapons. "We have to help them," Emily said to Fluffy. The great creature's scales were now solid black with red stripes, a color combination Emily had never seen before. Fluffy was angrier than she had ever imagined possible. But what could they do? Emily was just one human with basic scientific equipment. Fluffy was powerful, but he was trapped in a deep pit with walls too steep to climb. Even if they could escape, how could they fight an entire invasion force with advanced technology? The answer came when Hegemony scouts found the amphitheater. 3 soldiers in powered armor marched down the stone steps, their weapons scanning for threats. When they saw Emily and Fluffy in the pit, they stopped and stared. "Interesting," said the lead soldier, speaking through a translator device. "A native apex predator and a human. The predator will make an excellent gladiator for the entertainment centers. The human can work in the deep mines." Emily felt anger rising in her chest. These creatures had destroyed the Villani villages, enslaved innocent people, and now they wanted to turn Fluffy into a fighting animal for their amusement. She would not let that happen. "You cannot take him," Emily said firmly. "He is not an animal. He is intelligent, and he is my friend." The soldiers laughed, a harsh, clicking sound. "Friendship between species is impossible," the leader said. "Only the strong survive. The weak serve the strong. This is the natural order." That was when Emily realized something important. The hegemony soldiers had energy shields that protected them from traditional weapons, but their shields were calibrated for known threats, projectile weapons, energy beams, and explosive devices. They had probably never encountered anything like Fluffy's plasma breath. Emily looked down at Fluffy, who was watching the soldiers with intense focus. The creature's scales were shifting through different colors rapidly. Fluffy was thinking hard about something. Emily realized that Fluffy understood the situation perfectly. The creature knew that the Villani were in danger, and it wanted to help. Fluffy, Emily whispered in their private color language, using her small light device. Can you get us out of here? Fluffy's scales flashed bright blue, yes. Then they shifted to purple, but he had a plan that would require trust. Before Emily could ask what the plan was, Fluffy moved. The creature's powerful legs bunched up, and suddenly it leaped straight up out of the pit. Emily barely had time to grab onto the soft frills around Fluffy's neck before they were both flying through the air. The hegemony soldiers fired their weapons, but Fluffy was already moving too fast. The creature landed on the amphitheater floor with a sound like thunder. The soldiers' energy shields flared as they tried to protect themselves, but Fluffy did not attack them directly. Instead, the creature opened its mouth and breathed. What came out was not fire, but something much more dangerous, a stream of superheated plasma that could melt through solid steel. The plasma hit the soldiers' shields and overloaded them instantly. Their armor began to melt, and they ran screaming from the amphitheater. Emily held tight to Fluffy's neck as the creature roared its defiance at the sky. For the first time since the invasion began, the hegemony had met something they could not easily defeat. But Emily knew this was just the beginning. Captain Reed would not give up easily, and he had many more soldiers than just 3 scouts. The war for the forest moon had begun, and Emily found herself riding a legend into battle. The first hegemony patrol to disappear vanished on a Wednesday morning. Lieutenant Vex was leading 5 soldiers through the northern forest, searching for Villani hiding places. Their last radio message was confused and frightened. "Command, we see something in the trees above us," Vex reported. "It looks like, wait, that cannot be right. It looks like a human riding some kind of massive creature. But that is impossible. Humans do not ride alien beasts into battle." The radio went silent. When Captain Reed sent another patrol to investigate, they found melted armor scattered across the forest floor. The metal was still warm, melted by temperatures no known weapon could produce. Reed stared at the twisted remains through his compound eyes, trying to understand what had happened. "Perhaps their weapons are more advanced than we thought," suggested his second-in-command. "No," Reed said slowly. "These were not hit by weapons. This looks like plasma damage, but at temperatures far beyond anything these primitives could create." He picked up a piece of melted armor. "And look at these claw marks in the trees. Something very large was here. Something that can climb." Emily and Fluffy had spent their first week of freedom learning to work together as a team. Emily had never ridden anything larger than a horse before, and Fluffy had never carried a rider. They practiced moving through the forest quietly, communicating without making sounds that would give them away. Emily discovered that Fluffy had amazing natural abilities she had never seen in the pit. The creature could change the color and pattern of its scales to blend perfectly with the forest around them. When Fluffy pressed against a tree trunk, Emily could barely see where the creature ended and the bark began. Fluffy was also incredibly fast and agile despite its size. The creature could climb straight up the tallest trees, moving from branch to branch like a giant squirrel. Emily learned to trust Fluffy completely, holding tight to the soft frills and letting the creature carry her wherever they needed to go. But the most impressive thing about Fluffy was the creature's intelligence. Emily would show Fluffy maps drawn in the dirt, point to hegemony positions, and explain simple battle plans using their color language. Fluffy understood everything immediately and often suggested improvements by changing the patterns Emily had drawn. Their partnership was built on respect and trust, not control. Emily never ordered Fluffy to attack or force the creature to fight. Instead, she would explain the situation and ask if Fluffy wanted to help. Fluffy always chose to help, but Emily knew the creature could say no at any time. Together, they began a campaign of guerrilla warfare that confused and frightened the hegemony forces. Emily used her knowledge of military strategy, learned from books and training videos, while Fluffy provided the raw power and natural abilities they needed to succeed. They attacked supply convoys first. Emily would scout the roads from high in the trees, riding on Fluffy's back as they moved silently through the canopy. When they found a convoy of trucks carrying food and weapons to hegemony outposts, they would strike from above. Fluffy would drop down from the trees like a falling boulder, landing directly on top of the lead vehicle. The creature's plasma breath would melt the truck's engine while Emily used her small sidearm to disable the other vehicle's communication systems. Within minutes, they would disappear back into the forest, leaving the convoy stranded and confused. The hegemony soldiers began to fear the forest. They reported seeing impossible things, a massive creature that could become invisible, a human who rode a legend, attacks that came from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Some soldiers refused to patrol alone, and others began deserting their posts entirely. Emily and Fluffy also rescued Villani prisoners. The hegemony had built several prison camps where they kept captured Villani as slave laborers. Emily would study these camps for days, learning the guard schedules and finding weak spots in their defenses. When they attacked a prison camp, Fluffy would use controlled bursts of plasma breath to melt the glowing force fields that held the prisoners. Emily would coordinate with the freed Villani, giving them weapons taken from defeated patrols and showing them safe paths through the forest to hidden camps. The rescued Villani could not believe what they saw. Their sacred beast was working with a human, fighting to save them from the invaders. Many of them began to think Emily was some kind of prophet or chosen warrior sent by their gods. But Emily always made sure the Villani understood the truth. Fluffy is not fighting because he has to, she would tell them. He is fighting because he chooses to. We are partners, not master and servant. He could leave anytime he wanted, but he stays because he wants to help you. Captain Reed became obsessed with capturing or killing Emily and Fluffy. He sent larger and larger patrols into the forest, equipped them with better weapons and sensors, and offered huge rewards for information about the mysterious pair. But Emily and Fluffy always stayed one step ahead. They had help from the Villani, who provided them with food, supplies, and information about hegemony movements. More importantly, they had something the hegemony could not understand, a bond between two different species based on friendship and mutual respect. The turning point came when Emily and Fluffy attacked the main hegemony base directly. It was a daring plan that should have been impossible, but Emily had learned to think like Fluffy, not just with human logic, but with the instincts of a natural predator. They struck at dawn, when the guards were changing shifts. Fluffy used its camouflage to approach the base unseen, carrying Emily on its back. When they were close enough, Fluffy climbed straight up the outer wall while Emily planted explosive charges on the power generators. The explosions knocked out the base's shields and communication systems. In the confusion that followed, Emily and Fluffy disappeared back into the forest, leaving the hegemony forces blind and isolated. Captain Reed realized he was no longer fighting primitive natives. He was fighting something much more dangerous, two minds working as one, combining human intelligence with alien abilities in ways his tactical computers could never predict. The war was far from over, but Emily and Fluffy had proven something important. The hegemony could be beaten, and the forest moon would not fall without a fight. Captain Reed's pride was broken. For 3 months, a single human and her alien companion had made his entire invasion force look like fools. His superiors were asking hard questions, and some of his own soldiers were starting to doubt his leadership. Reed knew he had to end this embarrassment quickly, or his career would be over. The answer came to him while he was studying battle reports in his command center. Every attack, every rescue mission, every humiliating defeat had one thing in common: the human always fought alongside the creature, never alone. Reed realized that if he could separate them or force them to fight on his terms, he might finally win. Reed activated the planet-wide communication system and broadcast his message to every receiver on the forest moon. His voice echoed through Villani villages, hegemony outposts, and the deep forest where Emily and Fluffy were hiding. "Human warrior," Reed announced, his translator making his insect voice sound cold and mechanical. "You have caused me great annoyance. I challenge you to single combat in the ancient amphitheater where we first met. If you win, my forces will leave this world forever. If you lose, your people will surrender unconditionally." Emily heard the message while she and Fluffy were resting in a hidden cave. She looked at her companion, whose scales were shifting through worried colors, yellow mixed with red, meaning danger and uncertainty. "He wants to fight me alone," Emily said quietly. "He thinks humans are weak without our technology." She scratched behind Fluffy's frills, a gesture the creature had come to love. "What do you think, big guy? Should we show him how wrong he is?" Fluffy's scales brightened to silver, agreement and determination. The creature touched Emily gently with one of its smaller claws, a gesture that meant together, always. The next morning, Emily and Fluffy arrived at the ancient amphitheater. Hundreds of Villani had gathered to witness the battle, sitting in the stone seats where they had once watched their sacred beast in captivity. Now they watched with hope and fear as their unlikely heroes prepared to face the enemy commander. Captain Reed was waiting in the center of the arena, wearing his best combat armor. The suit was a masterpiece of hegemony technology: energy shields, plasma cannons built into the arms, rocket boosters for flight, and armor plating that could stop a tank shell. He looked like a mechanical demon with glowing red eyes. "You came alone, as expected," Reed said, his amplified voice echoing off the stone walls. "Humans are weak. You cannot win without your pet creature to help you." Emily walked to the center of the arena, but she was not alone. Fluffy walked beside her, the creature's scales showing calm confidence. Emily placed her hand on Fluffy's great head and smiled at Captain Reed. "I accept your challenge," Emily said clearly. "But not as an individual. We fight as partners. We are not human and beast, we are friends who choose to stand together." Reed laughed, the sound like grinding metal. "Impossible. Your primitive mind cannot truly communicate with that animal. It is just a trained pet following simple commands." Emily's expression hardened. She turned to Fluffy and began communicating in their private color language, using a small light device to flash complex patterns. Fluffy responded with changes in scale color, and they had a quick conversation that Reed could not understand. "What are you doing?" Reed demanded. "I am asking my friend if he wants to fight with me," Emily replied. "And I am explaining our battle plan. Fluffy understands everything, and he agrees with my strategy. We will work together because we choose to, not because either of us is forced to." Reed activated his armor's weapons systems. "Enough talk. Let me show you the price of defying the hegemony." The battle began with Reed launching himself into the air using his rocket boosters. He fired plasma bolts down at Emily and Fluffy, expecting to end the fight quickly. But Emily had studied Reed's armor for months, and she knew its weaknesses. "Now, Fluffy!" Emily shouted. Fluffy breathed a stream of superheated plasma straight up at Reed. The captain's energy shields absorbed most of the blast, but the intense heat overloaded his cooling systems. Reed's armor began to run hot, forcing him to land and shut down some of his weapons to prevent a complete system failure. While Reed was distracted by his armor problems, Emily and Fluffy moved. Emily rolled to one side while Fluffy charged from the other direction. Reed tried to track both targets at once, but his overheated sensors could not keep up. Fluffy's powerful tail struck Reed's legs, knocking the captain off balance. At the same moment, Emily threw a handful of metal debris at Reed's helmet, cracking his visor and damaging his targeting systems. Reed staggered backward, firing wildly. His shots went wide, striking the stone walls and sending chips flying. Emily and Fluffy moved like dancers, each one covering for the other, neither one fighting alone. "This is impossible," Reed screamed. "You are just animals. You cannot coordinate like this." "That is your mistake," Emily called back. "You see only a human and a beast. You do not see two friends who trust each other completely." The final moment came when Reed's armor finally overheated completely. His shields failed, his weapons stopped working, and his rocket boosters shut down. He stood in the center of the arena, helpless and defeated. Fluffy could have killed him easily. The creature's plasma breath would have melted Reed's armor like butter. Instead, Fluffy looked at Emily, scales flashing the colors that meant question and your choice. Emily walked up to the defeated captain and looked him in his compound eyes. "You said only the strong survive," she said quietly. "You were right. But you do not understand what makes someone truly strong. Strength comes from friendship, from trust, from choosing to help others even when it is difficult." She turned to address the crowd of watching Villani. "This war is over. Captain Reed's forces will leave our world, as promised. But remember this day, not as a victory of violence, but as proof that different species can work together when they respect each other." Captain Reed kept his word. The hegemony forces left the forest moon within a week, their ships disappearing into space like bad dreams fading at dawn. Reed himself was demoted and transferred to a desk job, his military career effectively over. Emily spent another month on the forest moon, helping the Villani rebuild their villages and establish trade relationships with Earth. But she knew Fluffy was restless. The creature's scales often showed colors that meant far away and searching. Using her ship sensors, Emily had detected quantum signatures near the galactic rim that matched Fluffy's species. Others of his kind were still alive, living in hidden colonies among distant stars. It was time for Fluffy to find his real family. On their last day together on the forest moon, old priest Aldrin approached Emily with an offer. "Stay with us," he said. "Become our leader. Our people would follow you anywhere." Emily smiled and shook her head. "Your people do not need a leader from another world. You have everything you need right here, wisdom, courage, and the ability to welcome strangers with open hearts. That is how you saved Fluffy long ago, and that is how you will build a better future. Emily and Fluffy left the forest moon in a small ship, heading toward the outer rim where Fluffy's people waited. As their ship disappeared among the stars, the Villani began telling new stories around their fires. They spoke of the human who befriended a god and rode him into battle. They told of trust that crossed the boundaries between species, and friendship that conquered even the most advanced technology. Most importantly, they remembered the lesson Emily had taught them, that true strength comes not from worship or fear, but from the courage to see others as equals, no matter how different they might appear. Years later, travelers to the forest moon would sometimes see strange lights moving between the stars. They said it was Emily and Fluffy, still exploring the galaxy together, still proving that friendship knows no boundaries among the endless void of space. The Villani would smile when they heard these stories. They knew that some bonds are too strong to be broken by distance or time, and that legends, once born, live forever in the hearts of those who believe in them.